Warhammer 40k is a popular franchise that is loved by, I'd say, at least millions of people. But here's the thing. On every channel on YouTube, a lot of the creators like to post their statistics, who is watching their videos, and it'll show their analytics, including my channel. And my channel matches all the others. And what we have found is that the only people watching our videos predominantly are male. That means 98% of the people on my channel and most other channels are male watching Warhammer stuff, which pretty much broadens out to 96 to 98% of our community is male. So, why is it that wargaming is dominated by men? And no, the reason is not just war. And why is it that we don't see women in our hobby? That's going to be the topic of the video. I'm going to go really hard into what masculinity means and why it's reflected from the time that we play as children till the time that we're adults in the way that we wargame, and why exactly that may not exactly be something that all females are interested in. So we'll talk about why it's this way, what could be done differently, and why we are the way we are when we play these games. I'm Bolt Gun Metal, and this is going to be a long video, so sit back and get comfortable. Now you're going to have to look at my face. So, why are war games predominantly played by men? We're going to go over the most obvious reason, just getting started. Yes, wars are fought by men. Football and contact sports are often played by men. It is not unlikely that men would want to play a competitive war game. It matches everything that we are. Let's go into that for a second. When kids play, I happen to have a son who's 7 years old. And when he plays, he likes to be something that's really powerful in his imagination. When he's playing action figures, Legos, video games, or in his, outside with a wooden stick, he pretends he's the most powerful thing there, and he's just whooping up on everything. Boys like that. Boys like to be overpowered, untouchable, godlike beings while facing off against defeatable enemies. Boys like to play cops and robbers where they're an invincible cop and the robbers, you only had to shoot them once with your wooden stick and they're defeated. Boys like that. They like to be invincible and they like to defeat many enemies, which is pretty much what Warhammer is when you get down to it. When you play a war game, you are in no threat. You can't get hurt, you can't get harmed, but there's a lot of but things get done for you. The fighting and all that is done for you. Your actual self is never in any harm while putting a bit of your ego at risk. As if you were playing a chess game. If you were playing chess and you lost to somebody, you might lose some ego, but you won't lose your head or die or anything like real warfare. So it often acts as a simulation of combat and military exercises to basically give us a feeling of control over an extremely chaotic part of the human condition, which is war. War is chaotic, horrific, violent, and terrible. But in a war game, it isn't actually many of those things. It's usually just dice being rolled on a table and models being removed. There is no gore, there's no things being burst into pieces unless you use your imagination. So, the game in general calls to a male's interests. That is obvious. That is the first and most obvious of points and took me 4 minutes to make, even though you totally get that. Why don't women have as much interest in this? Or do they? Well, my girlfriend and I have been trying to get her into Warhammer 40k. It took a very long time to even find an army that matched her desires, what she saw herself as. So we started to understand how a young boy plays. He plays Army Men, he plays Godzilla, he plays something that makes him feel powerful and in control. Well, if you ever went to a girl's house when you were a kid or had a sister, you'll know that they play dolls, tea parties. They play the same things as boys occasionally, and they do that. I'm not saying that's abnormal or anything like that. I'm just saying that if you ever went over to a girl's house, you noticed that they played differently and what they wanted from the game was different. It wasn't crush, maim, kill, destroy. It was like, oh, let's run a restaurant. oh, these people live in a house together and they don't get along. It was more about interpersonal relationships. And so if you look at the difference, like in the way we play, a G.I. Joe is an appropriate toy for a boy because that G.I. Joe incorporates his crush, maim, kill, destroy, his control by controlling the outfit, the gear, and stuff like that, and then imagination play by being in control of a character that they can see themselves as. A Barbie would do the same thing for a girl. Obviously, either gender or whatever you want to say can play with either toy. That's not a question. They can both enjoy a Barbie or enjoy a G.I. Joe. The reason that a Barbie is more designed for a female reaction to play is that it's basically designed for emotional games. It's about fashion. It's about jobs. My G.I. Joes had one job: kill the enemy. That was it. Kill the enemy or be the enemy. And that was pretty much it. And it was like, with Barbie, it was like, what is she going off to do each day? Is she flying a plane? Is she an astronaut? Like, who's she friends with? That's the kind of play that girls have an interest in. Let me ask you, does any of that really sound too much like a Warhammer or historical war game, tabletop game? Does any of that sound like dolls playing in a house? Well, I'm going to blow your mind and say, yes, it is. And I'll even show you why. I'm going to lose some followers with this take, but bear with me. Playing with dolls is not so different than playing war games. It's, like, I know this is kind of insulting and I don't like to hear it either, but for instance, you can open the little buildings and fill it with furniture, and it can even tell a little story. You get to choose the fashion and design for all your models. So what we call it, choosing their paint job, or choosing their faction paint, their chapters and stuff like that. To a girl, it might be picking the fashion of her models. That's what she might have more of an interest in, knowing that whatever she picks is a representative of how they feel. This isn't any different than how us as guys feel. It's just marketed different. When you look at these armies, you'll notice they have a very masculine tendency to them. And I do believe that girls would have an interest in war games if it wasn't for the fact that war games don't have an interest in girls. They don't. I have played 40 different war games, or 40 different armies. Pardon, I have not played 40 different war games, but at least 20. And I have to say, of them, the amount of times I played as a female character is just extremely limited. I right now have about 300 to 400 models, and we'll do a quick tour. Here's my Death Guard army filled with my Horus Heresy stuff and my 40k Death Guard. And this is about 70 to 80 models, and there's not a single female. How about down here? This is about another 65 models of the Alpha Legion. And it looks like a couple of them got knocked over by the dog, because he has been coming up here when he shouldn't be. But anyway, you may have noticed this army too has no female. How about my third army, these orcs? Nope. How about these ogres from Age of Sigmar that I'm using for this 40k game? Nope, still all male. How about the Tyranids? Surely these Xenos look feminine in some way. You could say, well, they don't have a gender. Well, they certainly don't look female either. Even a female dog has feminine qualities, and these just don't fucking have them. They're just straight up bugs, which, when was the last time you saw your girlfriend take an interest in a cockroach? How about the Astra Militarum, this fourth army? It's people, so it would totally make sense if I had some females in here, but there aren't any. And if they are so blended in. I know this kit doesn't have any, so I actually can promise you this army does not have any. I pretend that my ship isn't here right now, but I pretend my Valkyrie has a female pilot because you can't see the inside. But the model inside is male. So every model of this huge army is male. And let's go to the next one. Finally, the Ultramarines I have. Well, they're a representation of any Space Marine army in 40k, and guess what? There's not a single female model. And I know the lore dictates this, and a lot of people will get upset with me and say, it doesn't make sense, but to be honest, guys, it doesn't make sense from a marketing perspective to not have some form of female representation. All I'm asking for is for a female head that just goes on top of the male body. I want them to be built just like the male Space Marines. I don't have a problem with that. I just want the option, and they won't even give me it. And they won't give your girlfriend it, or any girl who's trying to play the game, that option. So then you say, go play Sisters of Battle. And it's like, so the game has 20 factions, 19 for men and 1 for girls. Isn't that like the exact percentage that I explained earlier? The 96% of men are playing 40K, while only 4% are. So 96% of players of 40K are men, and only 4% are women. And then we're saying 5% of the armies are for women. So you can even add those two up. I don't know if they actually correlate, but that does not matter. What I'm saying is women have one option if they want to play a female-only force, or a force that represents feminine fatale in any way. My girlfriend took an interest in Chaos Demons, and I think it's Slanesh. I've never been into the demons, but she found Slanesh that has these half-naked demon females, and she was like, that's perfect. That'll be okay for me. But she couldn't find anything that was actually pretty. She wanted some pretty models to go with her demons. We had to go buy outside of 40K and start proxying some angel models from a D&D range to give her a personal army that represented her. And I'm totally fine with proxying, of course, because I do it all the time. But it was upsetting that she couldn't just find representation within the 40K range. It just wasn't there. She's not a nun. And the female Space Marines Sisters of Battle are just not doing it for her. It was just, that's boring. Is there anything, a little more feminine, sensual? That's her, and she's just not into what they had to offer. So my main point is, why is this hobby mainly men? Because it's only sold to us. It's not being sold to women. And it's like, I don't know if it has a chance with women, but it certainly hasn't really been tested. And so now we're going to get into my solution. My solution for GW, to be able to basically market to women without losing its massive 96% male following, is to basically, to even those numbers, just to add more people. It's not a bad thing. We want to add more people, so it's like 80% male, 20% female, and now we just have, 500,000 new players. It's not a negative. It's just a good thing in every way. This is my idea. They release 4 to 6 armies at once, and this is going to be a big thing, and it's going to be called Feminine Fatale, and that's what the release is going to be called, Feminine Fatale. And that's a term often used in comic books to describe the badass comic book characters that we often see. So my idea is you release 6 armies that have feminine qualities to them, that are like, some are really sexy, some are really, just badass, like female Space Marine, like straight up 10-foot tall female Space Marines, pretty much an option for everybody. 3 bad guy ones, maybe 3 good guy ones, or 2 Xeno ones, 2 good guy ones, 2 Imperium ones, and then 2 demon ones, or something like that. The idea would be that when they release, there would be a whole story that connected the Feminine Fatale to 40K. So the first thing would be an all-female, let's say, I had this idea, which was like the heavy metal lady. And if you know what I'm talking about, the movie from Heavy Metal, or the chick from Heavy Metal, was this half-naked lady barbarian who wielded a large sword and walked around being sexy, slaying things while riding a dragon, basically. So I pictured a whole army of Amazonian women that were about 10 feet tall, half-naked, and had 10-foot-long swords and bolters, and would basically cut you down. And basically there'd be 2 different types of troops you could take, and it's them as savage women with these big swords, or you could take them as Space Marines, where they're enlisted as these 10-foot tall women that don't have the genetic things, so they have a lot of flaws and stuff. They're still women, but they're just these 10-foot tall women that can go man their own version of Primaris armor that's sexy and fits the body right and isn't bulky, like maybe it has a breastplate and looks good on a lady. And maybe you have them where some of them have armor missing and they have whole legs without armor and stuff, so they're sexy, badass, and cool at the same time. I want a bunch of options at the same time. What you do is you have all these armies come out at the same time with limited releases. Let's say 10 models per army, so about 60 new model sets that would come out with it. What you would want is that a lot of the armies would just have rules to be incorporated into ones that men already have. This is where I'm getting genius. The feminine fatale forces would be like Gene Stealer cults, any kind of Tempestus Scions. They'd be like extensions at first, where you could like have Space Marines and then add the female Space Marine troops just as another option to your army, so men could add females to their existing armies with no penalties or anything like that. You could kind of soup them and add them in as Ultramarine females or something like that. So that would be the first option, is that you can just implement them into your already existing armies. So there'd be a bunch of new female models that you can add to your Demon range, your Xeno range, all kinds of stuff like that. Like they could have Xeno females that are like Tyrannid females that try to that are like sirens that try to lure people in, and then when you get close they change forms into these horrible spider creatures. It's something I saw on TV, but I think it would really work. I think it was like a Black Mirror kind of thing, but I think something where we've really dove into every aspect of male psyche when it comes to warfare, from the Orcs barbarism to the order of the Astra Militarum, the honor and integrity of the Space Marines, the chaotic nature of chaos, obviously, and death itself when it comes to the Death Guard. 1 second. So basically what I'm requesting is that they could do 6 armies that can be standalone armies like the Gene Stealer cults, or they could be attached to your Tyrannid force like you can do now. And so you could basically add those spidery siren female Tyrannids to your list without it going soupy. It's just or with it going soupy. I don't know how they do the rules, but my idea is just that you could add these female models to your existing armies that already exist. And the logic would be that the 40K universe has hit a point where the combat is so vicious, so violent, that anybody who can lift a sword is in combat now. And we can even have a really badass story with some of the females where they were mothers and stuff like that. And they came and they said, here's the choice. It's either you or your children go to the trenches. And the mothers, choose, these ladies, go choose to go to combat so that their children don't have to. That's the kind of the kind of bravery that Ripley showed in Aliens, that we can show on the tabletop, that we all respect, every sex and gender. And it's like, so I do think that it's a marketing problem. Our hobby isn't essentially for girls. I was teaching my girlfriend how to play, and at one point she just asked me, is there anything else these models can do other than war? And I was like, what a beautiful question that is, because generally speaking, no, they can't. They can just move, shoot, butcher each other with an axe, and do psychic attacks and run away. That's it. And it's like, so they really can't do anything other than that. They can't share a glass of grog. If you wanted them to drink together, you'd need to play D&D. Like if you want to do interpersonal stuff, you need to play D&D. And it's like, why does D&D have a way larger female roster of players? Because it allows them to implement their version of play. And I don't think that war games really do that for girls. And I don't think it's essentially eventually going to crash. I do have a belief that in this day and age, if you have a rather misogynist game, a game that's all about men, war, and what they're into, it's only a matter of time before that thing gets changed in the wrong way. I think you should get ahead of it and change it while you can to the rules that make sense. Right now, anybody could make a case that the game's fucking sexist, and there's not much us guys can say that it's not. And it's like, well, we could argue, well, it's, most of the people playing are men, so it makes stuff for men. But it's like, well, they never really tried anything else. And the one time that they did, it attracted a ton of players that were female to play Sisters of Battle. Most female players will play something that represents them. Here's some examples. I said my girlfriend's playing Demons of Slanesh, I think it's the female ones. And my friend, his girlfriend, she painted her Space Marines fluorescent Barbie pink because that represents her. And she can pretend that underneath those helmets are a bunch of girls. And nobody's going to stop her from doing it because we just want her to join the game and have fun. Same for my girlfriend. We just want them to have fun with the game. And we understand that it's just war. It doesn't get to be dollhouses and them getting along. And I always kind of tricked my girlfriend in a sense by telling her this really elaborate romance story that I've had being told by playing games and having those results of the game kind of write my own lore. And so she was really smitten by this deep romance story that I said was kind of based off of her, which is true. But then, she is coming to realize, it's just rolling dice, and the rolling dice part she's not having a problem with. It's the part where it's just war. It's just war. There's nothing else for her models to do. And the part that I'm telling with the storytelling, she's pretty much like, how about I just do that? Like, how about we just do the part with the romance and the storytelling and fighting ages of war to get to this woman he loves? Why can't I see that part? And I'm like, well, this is the part that writes that. It's like the engine that does it. But at the same time, for her, it's just, you're showing me Risk or Call of Duty, and you're expecting me to jump in and show interest, even if they had a girl character. That is what I'm pitching here. So if you've listened this long and haven't disagreed with me in the comments, that is what I'm pitching is, hey, if we add some female characters to Call of Duty, maybe girls will come play. Now, it doesn't really work that way and didn't really make the game better either in that case. But what I'm suggesting is to get ahead of the getting called out, because in this day and age, as big of a company, Games Workshop does make over $1 billion a year, or they're a multi-billion dollar company. So eventually they will get called out on their hyper-masculine products, and I don't have a problem with it at all. I love their hyper-masculine products. Being ex-military, I'm hyper-attracted to things that are all dudes being a bunch of bros who want to just blow up shit, and fuck shit, and go home. And you're like, that's pretty much like where I came from, and I like to go back to that when I play war games. So like, I like to go back to my barbaric military roots, and it's like that. I understand why guys want to protect this hobby, why they want to protect this kind of safe space as it's become for men, unfortunately, because it is a place where we don't have the dialogue of women to argue with us or disagree with us or agree with us. It's just all men. So it is a bit of a sausage fest, and I do believe that whenever I'll just say this, when I was a kid and I went over and played at the girls' house, they'd want to play Barbie, I'd bring my G.I. Joe, and we'd incorporate each other's ideas and make a great game. We'd make a game where he's in love with Barbie, but he gets orders and he's got to go to war. So now me and the other boy are going to go over here and play the war scene, while the girls over here play the, at home and sad, and maybe even cheating on their boyfriends. I remember that. Or cheating on their soldiers. Yeah, funny to play that as a game and then be in the military and watch it happen to real people. I was like, whoa, was it like voodoo doll? No, but it's like I saw that when we incorporated each other's ideas, each other's imagination, and each other's play, it actually made for a greater game. Like, she likes Labyrinth and is really interested in that style of fantasy, like just high fantasy with the princesses and the unicorns and stuff like that. And Warhammer 40K and the Age of Sigmar barely dabble into that. So I was like, how about we make you a custom army that's really high fantasy and really like you, and we'll just say that when people are near your army, they start tripping balls like they're on acid if they're just near the army. So that explains why it's colorful and girly. You see, that even explains it for me. That's what my ego needs, because I'm a man playing against a bunch of fairy princesses and butterflies, and I'm going to lose. I need to come up with a reason that it's acid. I even told her, if you don't want your models to be killing people, you can pretend, like since we're playing pretend together, because that's all a war game is underneath, is like basically you can roll the dice, or you can basically say when you kill a model, maybe they're not dead, they ran away terrified because of the psychological mind tricks you did, or the attacks that you did, or maybe your women laugh at them and it humiliate them to a point where they run away. Whatever makes you happy. And, as I always say, when you play against somebody, it's better to look at it as you are two competing directors instead of two competing generals. You're two competing directors trying to create a scene in a movie. You just happen to want the Ultramarines to win, and they happen to want the Orcs to win. So you're two directors trying to get that scene, and when you do that right, you end up making a great movie and a great experience that you remember as if it really happened. Like, oh man, my Orcs were holding off in this building, and the Ultramarines kicked in the door and started shooting them all up, and my last Orc, he finished off the last Ultramarine, and finally the Orcs took the hill. You know, like, you say it as if you were there, and it's like, that's what we're going for with this game, and adding women to our hobby isn't a bad thing. I think the introduction to women into this hobby should be handled smoothly and correctly. Like I said, giving every army an ability to add females to them and build their own female armies if they want them. I think that would be great because it allows inclusion if you want it, or if you don't. If you're a bunch of guys and you have 5 friends and you're like, fuck that feminine fatale shit, I fucking hate it. It's dumb lore. I hate it. It's stupid. Well, you can just scoot over here and play in your universe where that never happened. That's what's great about 40K is you can write your own lore and do your own thing. You should try it. And it's like, so if you don't like it, you can find a way. And it's like, for me, I found a way to accept that. Like, I told her, well, imagine if there was a historian and your historian is saying, oh, your men ran away like pansies when I defeated them. Well, I'm saying they didn't. And we're two competing historians then saying, you know, I think it went like this, and you're saying, I think it went like that. And it's two different but it's basically two different belief systems. I'm saying my men were brave, and you're saying they weren't. And it's like, so we're both writing the lore together, and in the end, it still writes the scene. So, is Warhammer all for men right now? Totally. Is that going to change anytime soon? Probably not. And does it need to? Probably not. Not right now. It would be better to get ahead of that before you get called out and get called a fucking, misogynist piece of shit Nazi company that supports all the worst things. They've been tagged a little bit, but wait till they make a movie or do the one wrong step in the wrong direction is, in this day and age, with as big of a company they are and big of a product, advertising everywhere, it's only a matter of time before somebody calls out the fact that the fucking thing is sexist as fuck. And it's like, in the grimdark of the 41st millennium, nobody's fucking. There's unlimited procreation, but they'll never talk about anybody getting laid. All they'll talk about is what happens when a bolter hits somebody's flesh. And it's like, well, to be honest, like, half of what's happening in the 40K universe would be sex. It's like, it's very excited to show gratuitous violence, but it also, I'm literally saying, let's not go child friendly. Let's add the sex part of heavy metal. Let's have sexy women with chainswords. I have no problem with that. I think they are missing. I love heavy metal. It's I'm not talking about the music. I'm talking about the 80s movie. It's like my favorite concept and feeling of a movie. It just feels right. That, like, just, it's all about what men want. And this doesn't even have it. It's more about, it feels like right now, what a man would want if he was genuinely pissed at women right now. Like, that's what it feels like as far as a massive sausage fest. And having been in the infantry for fucking 3.5 years as a medic, all I knew for 4 years was being in a sausage fest full of men. And I gotta say, it's not really proactive to creating good thought processes. It creates echo chambers, and it also creates toxic, violent, dumb people that aren't having their thoughts challenged by women who care about people, who have fucking empathy. And it's like, these games, I'm telling you, including your girlfriend into it, could have some benefits. But I'm telling, I really do feel it's a man's product. It's made for men, but we'll see how long it stays that way. It can't be that way forever. I really do believe that. I do think we've already seen video games, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings with its Amazon series, kind of get gentrified, Hollywood wokeismed. And I'm like, I think you should just jump ahead and make your own female products before somebody tells you to. That's honestly what I'm saying, is do a good job while you still have control of the situation. And that way when somebody say, you don't represent anybody, say, well, we got 6 fucking female armies that we came out with 2 years ago, and we've put out 70 products for them. What are you talking about? 20% of the people who play our games are girls. They can't say that right now. They can say 4% of the people who play our games are female. Oh, how many armies, what percentage of your armies are female? About 5%. Oh, kind of sounds like if you made more products for ladies, they would buy more. You know, it's only a matter of time before they get called out. I hate to say that. So masculinity isn't a bad thing. I'm not saying that at all. Having been in the military, using your man voice and fucking sounding off to get people to do what the fuck you need them to do when you fucking need them to do that fucking matters, and men matter. And I love the guys. I don't care how that sounds. I love my male friends. You guys are great. Your brothers and your buddies in life and your fathers, out there are really, they are important. And I'm not trying to say that you guys aren't. Please don't take it that way. You are the backbone of this hobby right now. I think it's time for us to share our hobby. If I had a daughter, I would be getting her just as into this hobby as I'm getting my son. And she would take interest in it because dad's into it. It's how kids are. Get your daughter into it. She might enjoy it. And it's like, that's what I'm trying to say is don't be biased about who can enjoy the game just based on their sex. Just because everybody right now is playing it as male doesn't mean it's going to always be that way. Maybe one day girls will see the fun in this. We've already seen the South Park episode called Board Girls that was all about women enjoying board games from a young age, like being into it and getting into that. It was all about them winning and kicking ass at it. And most of the time, I hate to say it, South Park is usually right on the money about things and cultures that are changing and that are happening. And I do see it that way. So the hobby will change eventually. I say we go ahead and jump ahead, add some badass, sexy heavy metal ladies, some aliens, and some orc females that come from a different tribe and come up with some cool lore that mixes them in there, kind of protect the people who are gonna freak the fuck out about it and make it really soft lore that's barely a big deal. I told you my lore. The galaxy is in such peril because of Leviathan that they're enlisting from everywhere, pulling from every dark world that we've never heard of, and that's why we're getting all these extra forces that can be added to your army. Feminine fatales. And it's because multiple militaries have pulled. You can even say, oh, there's now Death Guard females because they've killed the Ultramarine females. You can easily build it up like that. And it's like I said, you could release them all at once. That might stress out people. Maybe do 2 at a time. I don't know. But this is my last thing. The female fatale thing should start with a starter box that's no different than Leviathan or anything else. And it should also have its own campaign. This is my final thing. It should have its own version of the game. It should still be 40K, 10th edition and everything. But it should also have rules for a game that is more feminine based. I'm just going to say that. They should have something that's just one for the girls. Like, they should have something that's offered to them if they want to take interest in that. And I was like, we've had so much personal stuff made for us by this hobby. It would be nice, I think, to spread the love a little bit on that. So, the hobby's all for men right now. Should it stay that way? Do you think it should? And do these numbers concern you? Do you think one day GW is going to have to change with the way modern society is, how Hollywood is, and all those things like that? Do you think one day Warhammer 40K as we see it today will have to change and become, it's going to have inclusion at some point? I just kind of have the feeling that they should get ahead on it and do it right. Do it themselves. Do what James Cameron did and make a movie that's completely feminist with aliens and have nobody see it that way. That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. Have Ellen Ripley and Vasquez in the same movie. Vasquez is a space marine who's just like the men, and then have Ellen Ripley who's just got the power of being a mother, and show that being a big badass with a gun isn't as strong as having the ability to care enough to go after somebody. It shows that sometimes loving something is more powerful than fucking hating your enemy. And I can tell you that as a medic, me loving my men was more important than me hating the enemy. That was the truth. So I do believe that. It's a little silly, but there you go. Last thing, I do think that this hobby is going to be okay no matter what. I don't want to leave you with that feeling, especially if you made it to the end. Everything's going to be okay. We're just talking about new toys being added to our toolbox to play with. That's all it is new toys being offered to all of us to play with. And in fact, it even means new players with new armies for us to play against, which I'm always down for. Who isn't down for siren aliens that lure you in and try to feast on your soul? Or turn you into something. That just sounds fucking cool. I don't care if it's girls or boys, it just sounds fun. I don't have to play as the girls if I don't want to. I'm not totally into that. All of these ideas, I probably wouldn't play as any of them, to be honest. I probably wouldn't build a female army, but I would play against any fucking one of them, because that would be awesome. So that's kind of how I feel, is I want to play against those armies. I'm probably going to stick with pretending to be a giant macho badass guy, because I'm not that. So, that's the way I see it. It's I'm going to continue doing what I've done since I was, 8, where I pretended to be a big macho cool guy, and that's what we do is play for men. And I would love to play against a girl and let her express herself while she plays the game as well. I think that sounds awesome. It sounds different. It might be a completely different experience than sitting with dudes chugging a beer and doing it. When you're laughing with your girlfriend and coming up with hilarious things that could have happened instead of, when I explained to her how the game worked, I didn't want to explain to her that I was shooting missiles out of a bolter. So I basically was so he's going to shoot his Nerf guns, and if we're going to see first if he hits him with the Nerf gun. Okay, hit him with the Nerf gun. Now we're going to see if the Nerf gun hurt him. Ooh, that hurts. That's what we're going to find out now. Oh, look, I rolled a 5, so it did hurt him. So now you're going to roll a dice to see if you're okay with that. And so she rolls the dice, and then she's like, okay, I get that. And it's that's how I explained it, was pretty much they're just shooting stuffed animals at each other. And it's she had more interest in that. And it's well, you know what? It's not a problem for her to be in her little world about what's going on the battlefield. As long as you're playing the same rule set and playing the game correctly, it's okay for her to imagine her army's throwing teddy bears at you, and you can imagine that they're disgusting, foul creatures that you're just boltering away and blowing apart. It's okay. It's okay to just agree to disagree on what the movie would be. That's fine too, especially if you're both enjoying just playing games against each other and enjoying the game. As always, I just want this hobby to go on. I want more people to join it, young, old, female, male, and everything in between. Everybody should be playing this game because I fucking love it, and I want to play against everybody once I stop being an awkward weirdo who, doesn't want to leave my attic. But thank you for listening to me for so long. Kind of an intense video. It sounded like, oh no, what are we going to do? But honestly, it's not a big deal. It's I think it could be handled really well, to the point where we've got badass female space marines with half their armor stripped off because it's been burned away, holding a giant chain sword in the enemy's head. That's the kind of models we can get. And I'm just down for new toys. And it's that just sounds like a cool new set of toys that they could go into. And I heard Auspex Tactics, I want to call him out. He was actually the one that was saying, hey, I heard him say in a video, hey, this place is a sausage fest, look at my stats. And I was I've been looking at mine too. And it made me start checking everybody else's and, asking around. And it was true. So there we go. The hobby is for men. Should it stay that way? I really think it's time for us to invite anybody who wants to come play Warhammer 40K, because it's a great game, great system, and a great alternative to digital electronics. That's the way I see it. So thank you for listening to me. I hope you enjoyed the video. Bolt Gun Metal. Thanks again.